Hey guys, this is going to be my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 6. The episode is called Lost in Translation. Full spoilers from the start of this review. This is a Uhuru-centric episode, and the gimmick of the episode is then she starts hearing these random sounds which no one else on the ship can hear, and it leads her to having these really extreme hallucinations. So these visions come to her, including things like other members of the ship being struck down dead. So they start to figure then it could all be like something to do with like something contacting her or some sort of illness she's got. So that becomes the mystery of things. Things also come to a head when they decide then there's probably been someone sabotaging the ship because the engines go down. So it could be like linked to this stuff, and you've got the Carol Kane character Paola once again, and she's the one who voices that, figures it out that someone's probably sabotaging the ship. And as they start to investigate, they discover this other guy, Ramon, who is suffering from the same thing as Uhuru is. So they start to try and figure it out and question him. And that's when things come to the head. And there's also a guest appearance by James Kirk, like this timeline's version of James Kirk, and he starts having some interactions with Uhuru and starts helping her out to try and figure out what exactly is happening. So this is an episode which is packed with lots of like character dynamics and links to the previous Trek universe, so it's definitely riffing off those nostalgia buttons quite a bit and playing with the dynamics, like the fact that you've got Uhuru and Kirk in this episode featured so strongly working together, and in this timeline this is the first time they've met, and it just has a lot of fun with that. There's even a scene that closes the episode of Spock, Uhuru and Kirk having a drink over the like as we cut to the end credits. And there's stuff with like Kirk is like running this ship, which Pike is now going to be like running on a temporary basis. So like he's gotten a recent promotion, so we have some scenes with him and his brother Sam, and we find out that Sam's quite bitter and frustrated at the legacy that they're expected to continue from their father. So like little bit of sibling rivalry there. So this was a much better episode than last week's. I enjoyed it quite a bit. The gimmick of the episode worked really well, and I like this version of Uhuru, so it's great to get a bit more of her, to get an episode focused on her. Like, you're really rooting for her in this episode, and it's just a great, like, really condensed, high concept Trek episode, a bit like we've had in recent weeks. But it's also quite tense, and at times it like feels a bit like an Alien style premise. So like some stuff with Uhuru and the others like checking down these like darkly lit hallways, and just this industrial sounds and flashes of energy and like coming from all over the place. That felt very Alien. So like those parts of the episode are pretty tense and quite horror centric, so I definitely appreciated that. And it's also quite dark at times, like the stuff that Uhuru starts to see and stuff. So like overall it's a really satisfying episode. I also liked it because of the way it uses the other characters as part of like the plot, where they don't feel like just padding. They do feel like they're adding little bits to the plot, as well as having a little bit of their own stuff going on at times. So, like, Pearl is a good example of this. And I know Carol Kane as part of this show isn't for everyone, but I took to her from the first episode that she appeared. And this is her standout episode so far because what happens is this becomes a big episode emotionally for Hulu because it tracks back to when Hammer died and in the first series, and she was very close to him. He trained her as like an engineer, and when they had the flashback at the start of the episode, I thought, okay, why are they showing this flashback? And like, it was a big moment last season when that happened because he was set up as like a long-running main character, so it was impressive that they had the guts to kill him off. But because Hulu was so close to him, it makes sense to bring this back in this episode and show that she's still like mourning his loss, and his presence is very much felt in this episode. So you see her watching old training videos of him, which I think is like a suggestion from like Pella. So those scenes are really effective and quite emotional, and you just feel his presence like over her in this episode. But it's key then she starts, when the ship is having these engines problems, and she starts like watching old footage of him training her to learn lessons. So that's really nice. But yeah, Pella, as I was saying, has some great scenes. She has a good scene with her Hulu, and some great scenes with Una. I really enjoyed those scenes, and some great back and forth. I particularly like the line "space hippie," which is like what Una calls her at some point. But Pearl really shows her worth because she's the one that figures out that there's a saboteur on the ship, and just her reaction to everything is so entertaining and funny. And I think she just has this knack of like being really blunt, as she always is, and outspoken. But in the end, like, she does figure things out, and you see that there's a method to her madness. She's not just being like a bit of a jerk. Like, she actually points people in the right direction. And because the theme of this episode is like dealing with your loss, coming to terms with loss, and confronting your emotional issues. So you can almost see it as a bit of like mental health, like commentary. And I think that's definitely been a big theme of this season of Strange New Worlds. So when her and Una are having their set to, like, she points out, because there's this funny thing about how Una's pissed with her for giving her a C at like the academy, and like Paolo gives her a bit of shit, like, your work was sloppy, you deserve that C. But then she then points out that this isn't about that C, this is about me replacing Hammer and you not coming to terms with that. And so although she's very blunt as usual and upfront about things, like, there's definitely, as I said, a method to what she's doing, and has some crucial moments in the episode. And there's also stuff with Sam Kirk in the Hulu where he has a nice little speech where he like says you can't let death win, because at the moment it is winning, but the way for you to overcome this stuff is to confront your emotions over losing Hammer and things like that, and just to face up to these things and not let them win. So that's a really good speech, like a Trek style speech. And I enjoy the stuff with Uhuru and with Kirk. Again, it is a weaker sort of Kirk, and it's not really like the feel of James Kirk than you come to know, but they have some good scenes nevertheless. And there's just little bits with other characters, like there's quite a nice scene with Nurse Chapel and Spock where they're playing like chess, and him being like all very by the book, he wants to like make their relationship official, and he wants to declare it, which is like obviously protocol, but she's a bit more casual about it and says, well, why don't we wait and see where things lead? And she has this funny like metaphor about the cat, like this cat sort of metaphor, and so that's good fun, because that on its own maybe feels like, well, that's just their own stuff, but then it works into the Hulu stuff, because then she comes along, and this is at the point where she's really starting to get desperate and freak out, and she asks like each of them for their advice, and Spock isn't very helpful and basically almost dismisses it as like not a big deal, and Chapel just offers like her like medicine to sleep. And I like the line from the Hulu where she's like, the last thing I need right now is to sleep, and I just love that urgency from her. Like, it really fits so well. But that chess scene is quite a nice scene, and you have some fun scenes along the way with different characters in the episode. I'll say before I round up the episode and the main plot is, there's one scene really that I didn't like and which stands out as a weaker scene, and that is the scene with Liana and with Kirk, because they return to that well once again, and it was in the flashbacks, their time travel episode from a few episodes ago. Now, when they start looking for this Roman guy, because he like starts freaking out and almost stabs, well, he does stab a bit like in Benga, but not enough to kill him, and then he flees. So they start searching for him around the ship, because as I said, it turns out is the saboteur, and he's suffering from the same thing as the Hulu. So they go after him, and there's a moment when Khan is with Pike, and they run into Kirk, and like she does a double take. Obviously, it's a different Kirk. Like, it's a Kirk in a different timeline, not the one she had the episode with a few weeks ago. So he doesn't recognise her, but she pauses, and Pike is like, well, do you two know each other? And she's like, there's not enough time. Now is not the time. It's a long story, and they move it along. Now, if they'd left it at just that, then I wouldn't mind the stuff, but instead they have to have like a big like emotional scene between them, and for me it's the weakest scene of the episode, because they're talking about their fathers again, and now about their upbringings were too weak, and it just got to the point where this subtext was like too on the nose, and like she gives him an inspirational speech about how she basically says, because he's having doubts over like being a part of like the Federation and Starfleet, and she's giving him like a positive pep talk about how she's had a good experience, and it assures him that then it's worth doing. Like, it's really impacted her for the positive. But yeah, just because they have this whole meaningful conversation, and the nature of the conversation is just too on the nose, and it's a well they didn't need to go back to, and I think they're going to go back to it again. Romantic moment, and there's a suggestion these characters might go for a drink, like that scene. That's the weakest scene of the episode, because to me it just feels like they did everything they needed to do. Time travel episodes, and that episode worked perfectly good. You didn't need any more here. So that's my one like complaint with this episode. The gimmick of the episode and the mystery resolves itself for me was like very satisfying, because it turns out that Uhuru is being contacted by this alien like life forms, and warning her to communicate to Pike and the rest, and they're actually destroying their own life forms by their actions with like this other ship, like, because it's all to do with like gas leak. So they're there. So once again you get a bit of like a like a modern sort of like climate style message, pollution. So that becomes her thing, and they piece it all out quite nicely, because different images, different flashes that she's had in the episode are communicating different things. And she tells Pike, then we've got to like stop it. He says it's too late. We already started it like 5 minutes ago. And then she says, well, we've got to destroy it then. And in the end, they destroy it. And there's a nice little moment with a vision of Hammer appearing and giving her like sort of a nod or a thumbs up, whatever it was, and just confirming that their actions have paid off. So, yeah, the way it all played out and stuff was really good. And overall, I think it's a strong episode. There is a lot going on. And there's definitely moments where they tread a fine line between being like too nostalgic or nodding too much at the fans and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's a very strong episode. It may even be one of my favourites of this season. So that's my thoughts on the latest Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media. You can support the channel at patreon.com/boardnow for just $1 a month. I'll be back with more soon. Thanks guys. See you later.